Okay, you'll have to forgive what I look like. I'm in the middle of stripping the colour out my hair. It will take a few goes, but I'll get there. So regardless of the fact that I look a bit of a mess, I saw a video on self-sufficiency and how the countries wouldn't thrive and survive without America. Now let's get one thing very straight. We all do trade with America. And yes, we all do trade and have imports with the rest of the world, including England. We do that. But let's get one thing very straight. If it came to a point where the whole world had to become self-sufficient, it would be hard. Yes, it would. If England had to become self-sufficient, it would be hard. We would struggle for about 3-4 years, after which we would go back to, we would in that process be going back to basics. You see, over the centuries, the thousands of years that we've been here, and I mean thousands of years that we've been here, we go right back to the Anglo-Saxons, and in fact we go right back to Sodom and Gomorrah. We go right back to the giants. We've had giants here. They actually are part of our justice system. In fact, they created our first justice system, so much so that they hold up our justice system. Their statues are actually inside our houses of justice. I don't actually know what they're called. I probably do, but I've forgotten for the minute because my brain doesn't think that far ahead most of the time. Because I looked it all up, about 2 years ago, because I wanted to know why there were giants here and why they were so important to England. But they are part of our justice system. Sodom and Gomorrah, they were here in England, and they were a massive part of the beginning of our justice system, which is really strange. And then there were the Anglo-Saxons, so we've been here for a very, very long time. But the Anglo-Saxons were the beginning of us, England, as it stands today. But there's been people here for a long time, self-sufficient people here for a long time, settlements here for a long time. But the Anglo-Saxons were the beginning of England, the very beginning of England. And they were self-sufficient. Funny concept. They were actually self-sufficient. And they continue to be self-sufficient through all of the raids and the takeovers and, the Vikings and the Romans and everybody else that came here, right up until we get to William I, who unified England. Actually unified England to a point. And it wasn't a complete, unification. It was we had England, it became, a actual kind of stability as it stood. There was, he brought stability to us. We weren't just being invaded left, right and centre anymore. We were actually thriving nation, not just an invasion one after another. So William I of France was actually the beginning of a new dawn and a new era here. He pushed the Scots up to where they are now, which the Scots did not like. We took away a huge chunk of their land. Pushed them right up to the north of the country, and which they did not like. And they were forever trying to take it back. And I think they are to this day still sort of disputing that border. But there is this concept that we have a thriving nation here, and it's always been self-sufficient. So this concept and this thing that said that we'd never be self-sufficient, well, we would, we could, we've been there, we've done that, we've had a fall of a nation. We've fallen before. We've had recessions, we've had falls of empires. We've had issues with currency. We've had issues with economies. We've had poverty. Anything and everything you could think of that could ever happen to a country has happened to us. And it's happened to every other nation. We've all starved. We've all had famines, diseases, wars. Anything and everything that could ever happen to a nation has happened to absolutely all of us, because we've all been here for a hell of a long time. And yet, for some odd reason, we're still standing. And yes, now we get to sort of, once we got to a position in the world where we started to travel, especially when we got closer to the 1800s and the 1900s, the 19th century, trade became more apparent because countries were beginning to talk to each other. Trade was beginning to happen. 20th century really did hit a point where, we were starting to rely on each other a bit more. Diplomacy came into a lot of things, and yes, we started to rely on each other. By the end of the 20th century, we were really starting to rely on each other. It wasn't one country relying on the other. We were relying on each other to help each other out. England is a diverse nation, and we have diverse needs. But every country around the world is exactly the same. If we had to, we would struggle briefly for a few years, because we are so used to this lifestyle that we've got now that yes, it would be a struggle if we had to become self-sufficient again, and we would lose a lot of the luxuries that we've got now. Every country would lose something, and it would be a struggle because one, we'd have to adapt our diets again, and two, we'd have to readapt the country again. And it would take 3, 4, maybe 5 years to readapt everything. But it would happen. And we would all go back to basics, back to necessity, back to living the way we used to live. And we would become self-sufficient. People forget that every country around the world has done this over and over and over again. They've lost, they've had wars, they've had famines, they've had diseases, and where they've had to start the economy over and over and over again, where the people have starved, where the people have had to start again, where they've lost a lot. It hasn't stopped us, and it hasn't changed anything either. So if we had to become self-sufficient all over again, we're now we're in a much better, much stronger position, because one, guess what? In the 21st century, we now have things like wind turbines, so we can now produce like better and stronger energy and more affordable energy on our own turf. We have a lot of people, a lot of countries actually produce their own natural gas. England actually does have a gas line in it. I'm not sure how long it lasts, but there is actually a gas line that runs through England. I think my son was the one who found out about it. I was meaning to look it up, but I forgot, but I will check that out. Maybe one of you lot could and let me know. But yeah, it was my son that found that, said that there actually was one, and he's usually quite reliable. I've yet to doubt him. Every time he said something, it's usually come out true. As yet, he's never said anything that's wrong, so. But there is a first time for everything, so look it up. I meant to, I forgot. But, so check it out for yourself. But I'm pretty sure there is a natural gas line through England or Scotland or something. But even so, we can produce our own natural energy through the wind turbines that are actually scattered around the English and Scottish coastlines. And with our weather, it's actually quite useful because we can produce our own natural, affordable energy. So we're actually in a much stronger position than we were a century ago. You know, we have our own lands, we have our own pace. You know, we can actually do a lot more now than we ever could, like a century ago. So the concept that any country could actually not become self-sufficient if push come to shove is a ridiculous notion. I think the only country that probably couldn't is actually America. Because as far as I'm aware, as it stands right now, the farmers are actually already struggling in America, which I find really strange. If there's food issues going on in America, why aren't the farmers profiting off that? If there's farming issues going on in America, why? Why are there farming issues going on in America? Those farmers should be reeling it in, because on top of everything else, you've got a huge country, a lot of people. Those farmers should be the ones that are actually keeping your country stable, feeding your nation. So why is it your farmers are struggling? And yet, over and over and over again, every time I try and find out what's going on with your country, and I look at your food chains and I try and find out, your farmers are going, we are struggling, we're on the verge of bankruptcy, we can't survive. Why is that? Why are your farmers struggling to survive? Why are your farmers coming out saying that we're possibility of going bankrupt? Why is that a possibility when your country is so large and there are so many people in it? So the only country that I can see not becoming self-sufficient if the world shut them out is America. Because from what I can tell, your farmers are struggling. And you're not even self-sufficient yet. You still have trade going on right now. Why is there any struggle whatsoever with your farmers? They should be the backbone of your country right now. Your farmers should be the backbone of your country, not the ones left in the dirt and left to fend for themselves. What the hell is going on over there? But it does prove a point that the media is very biased. It's very biased towards the rest of the world and very America first. America's go great, but the rest of the world is crumbling. But if you actually check the world news and any news about America itself, if you actually try to find news on America, it tells you exactly what's happening. Why is it America's struggling so hard? What is going on over there? And yeah, I bet in the comments I'll have people going, everything's fine over here, we're doing really well, you should worry about yourself. What is the bet? And I'll have people in my comments going, America's doing really well, we are self-sufficient, we don't need anybody, we're so great. What's the bet? And I'll have people in the comments doing that. You know. But if you're doing so great, why are your farmers struggling? Your farmers shouldn't be struggling, they should be thriving. There is a serious issue that needs to be addressed. Because that's a massive problem. The rest of the world will struggle if we had to become self-sufficient. I am never going to take away from that. We will struggle for about 3, 4, maybe even 5 years while we got back on our feet, adjusted our diets, dealt with the fact that we had to negate the luxuries that we've had all these years, and got back to basics, But after that, we'd be fine. We would be okay. The world would be okay again. We would find our feet and we'd pick right back up. Our farmers would be doing what they do best. Our livestock and our economy would stabilise, and we would be just fine because that's how it works. Our gardens would be turned into allotments because that's what we do, and we would be just fine. we would relearn how to thrive and survive without the necessities. And yes, it would take a few years. Yes, we would struggle. Yes, it would be difficult. And yes, for a few years, our economy will fall. And yes, it wouldn't be easy. But once we'd figured it out, and once everything was actually up and running, everything would pick back up and we would be fine. And the whole world would do exactly the same thing. Because that's what we do. Because we've all done it 100 times before. All of us have done it 100 times before. Through every famine, every war, every revolution, every civil war, we've done it 100 times. But America's in a mess. Your farmers are coming out saying they're on the verge of bankruptcy and they're struggling. And they should be the ones thriving through all of this. They should be the ones thriving because your country is huge. Your people have need. So why are your farmers coming out saying they're struggling? That's the wrong way round. That is not that is a bizarre concept to me. Because in the rest of the world, our farmers would pick right back up and just go, this is what we got to do, this is how we got to do it, let's go, 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 go. And the rest of the world would, and we'll all follow suit. Our gardens would be turned into allotments because that's what we do. We take every bit of spare land and we turn it all into farmland. And we thrive. And food would become abundant. And it takes years, it's not a quick fix. And it's difficult. But to say that we would all collapse if we became self-sufficient, and they did, is a ridiculous notion. We would all struggle and our economies would fall for a few years. And it would be a difficult for a few years, and it would be a hard adjustment, and it would be hard because we're all so used to the way we live. But after a few years, we would be fine. You know, it would become every day to all of us, and we would just carry on. You know, could America really say the same thing? When times get tough in America, would you really get on your hands and knees and cut all your gardens down and go, right, we have to become self-sufficient, let's do this? Would you really get out there and do what is best for your nation and what's best for you if push comes to shove? Or would you blame it all on Biden?